Hello, everybody, and welcome to Beep Beep Lettuce, the show where we talk about weed, memes, and communism.
It's
a phrase
that show.
that we have maybe never said on the show, actually.
I think we have. Maybe.
It's
if
been
not,
in our
we're saying it
logo for a
now.
long time.
We've got
Weed, memes,
Bryn.
communism.
That's right. We've got Bryn and Chris and John. Todd is out of town still for the last time. Next episode, I'll be gone and Todd will be back. But
Todd's coming back, folks.
He's just huffing aerated DMT crystals right out of a paper bag. Right in the middle of downtown Manhattan.
yes, he's getting his mana back up after all of the fighting he's been doing in the content mines. Yes. So hello. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, looking good.
You're beautiful.
I love your coat, king or queen, or
It's a
non-gender specific person of royalty.
It's a good coat.
Looking good.
Yeah.
beautiful.
Have you been
It's
working
been
out?
cold outside.
You know? It seems like you might have lost weight. I don't know. If that's what you're aiming for, congratulations.
Did your New Year's resolutions pay off already? Incredible.
I love the haircut. It really suits you.
Yeah, I've just been on this completely keto, all meat diet I heard about from a jaundiced man who sounded like Kermit the Frog on YouTube.
That post that Joe Rogan made on Facebook about his all meat diet was so incredible. Where he was
That
like,
was one of the most-
first off, the diarrhea, it's very bad. I can barely. He had a whole thing about how he could like barely make it to the bathroom. He's like, when it comes on, I just have to pray that I make it in time. I'm probably going to shit my pants at some point.
Yeah, he's like, shitting my pants is inevitable at this point. It's not. It's not if it happens. It's when. And like every few sentences, he had to return to just describing his diarrhea. One, because he's Joe Rogan and he probably thinks that that's really funny, which I mean, to his credit, it is. And two, because it's got to be the most dominating force. Like his whole thing was like, I just ate a 50-ounce like porterhouse and I had bacon for lunch, and now I'm gonna eat a T-bone, like a 32-ounce T-bone for dinner. I'm like, dude, yeah, my shits would be like the fucking Nile River after that.
Oh
man.
Yeah, didn't Joe Rogan recently come out as a Bernie supporter?
Yeah, on
This
Twitter,
week?
there's a clip of him where I'm not sure who was asking him. It looked like it was on his show, but she
It was
just
on his show.
Yeah, she just decided to ask him like, so who are you going to vote for? And he was like, I think I'll probably vote for Bernie Sanders.
Yeah. I think it was
There was another
Barry
one.
Weiss.
No, there was
okay.
another one where it was like a guy on his show, and he was like, he was telling the guest, he was like, yeah, all of the presidential candidates have asked to be on my show, and I'm like, fuck off. And he's
that
like,
ruled.
and he's like, how do you the guest was like, how do you resist it? How do you like not care? He was like, because I don't like to just have people on to ramble about shit I don't care about. I just like to have people on who are my friends and who I think I respect, like Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard, and that's it.
Oh,
and I was like,
nice.
that's
Wow.
a really interesting. I mean, Joe Rogan has had really dumb people on his.
I mean,
Yeah, but
it shows just how low his opinion of like Joe Biden is when he's like, I'll have on Alex Jones, I'll have on Jordan Peterson, I'll have on Barry Weiss, I'll have on like probably 10 other insane intellectual dark web people. But fuck you if you think fucking Joe Biden's ass is coming on this show.
Yeah, but I feel like Joe Rogan is just like the epitome of the guy whose entire worldview is like from Googling life hack articles and like the Mind Unleashed articles. So it's the kind of person that you can appeal to, whether you're like a Bernie Sanders type who is just being very straight up with somebody and like actually, they respect that. They're like, oh, this person's being real with me. Or, they could just as easily be interested in like Trump or like Marianne Williamson or something, or like fucking libertarians like Gary Johnson and John
Right.
McAfee. Like Joe Rogan probably thinks John McAfee is the shit.
That's definitely true.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I
almost
guess in a-
impossible. It's not.
I guess in a weird way, it's like he thinks all of those people are like being real with him, except for really nakedly obvious politicians, where he's like, Joe Biden is bullshitting me.
Yeah.
But he's
Joe
like,
Biden
well,
is-
Alex Jones is like trying to tell me something about like stuff going on.
I mean,
and,
in
like,
a way, he's kind of right.
And Jordan Peterson is like, he might know something about, like society, he's a psychologist, but a politician that is just in it for themselves, fuck them.
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe Joe Rogan is just like has a superpower for smelling when someone is being dishonest. Like he doesn't care how dumb you are, but maybe in person, like Jordan Peterson is incredibly honest. Like he's just being honest about what he really believes.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
Jordan
probably.
Peterson absolutely believes everything that comes out of his mouth, no matter how like self-contradictory and plainly
Stupid
stupid it is. Same for
Yeah.
Alex Jones. Like he probably didn't always believe everything he said, but he's been playing a character for so long it just kind of consumed him, like that House of Cards character did to Kevin Spacey, and now he's just like full-blown insane, like fucking tinfoil on head guy.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Joe Biden, I guess. First up in the news this week, Joe Biden said something hilarious. He called game developers little creeps who make games that teach you how to kill.
I love that we're rehashing this. Every few years, it seems like they go after video games. Like the White House released that video a couple of years ago. There was like, video games are just killing simulators, and like they wanted to impose a tax on the more violent video games or something like that. Wait till they hear about what the U.S. military does to 17 and 18-year-olds. Like,
I know. What the fuck are you talking about? You're trying to be the leader of the biggest imperialist military in the world.
Yeah, and
like what are you
Call
talking
of
about?
Duty is like the problem with the United States. Like Call of Duty is probably responsible for the fact that the decline in enlistment in the armed forces didn't start to go down this sharply until now.
The Army literally made their own video game to get people to sign up. This like computer game called America's Army. That's really weird because I remember like in high school, like people playing that. They're like, "Yeah, I'm playing America's Army. It's fun." I like never played it, and then much later found out that it was literally made by the Army to make being in the Army seem cool and make kids want to sign up.
Yeah, that's
so
nuts.
fucked up.
It's
Well,
really
and it's
insane.
like video game developers always contract out like consultations from the armed forces and stuff, but you know that just as much as like they're asking them to be there, the armed forces is looking at these video game developers and they're like, "Oh, you make Call of Duty, or oh, you make another like Tom Clancy style shooter or something. Please let us tell you how to make us look really good in that and make us look like real fucking badasses."
Totally. I mean, that's definitely true. The actual quote that Biden said is almost more funny than what you might think he said. He says he was it was in the New York Times the choice.
Oh yeah, the endorsement thing.
When the New York Times,
Making a
which we're not
choice.
going to talk about because literally who gives a fuck what they think. But it's hilarious because they made a television show out of them deliberating
And a podcast.
Oh my God.
and a series of articles over a month or so about them deliberating who they were going to pick to endorse, to say who they want to be president.
That's
as if
so
anyone
crazy.
gives a shit who these fucking like New York liberals like care about.
Yeah, I saw a tweet about that was like, for some people who were trying to unseat Trump, they sure are making this process look a lot like The Apprentice. And I was like, wow, yeah, that really, really thonks your think there.
So in this article, he said they said he was asked about Silicon Valley's expansion of power during the Obama administration. And
Okay.
he said, "And you may recall the criticism I got from meeting with the leaders in Silicon Valley when I was trying to work out an agreement dealing with them protecting intellectual property for artists in the United States of America. And at one point, one of the little creeps sitting around that table who was close to a billionaire who told me he was an artist because he was able to come up with games to teach you how to kill people." So not only is he saying this game developer, who's clearly not a developer and more of an
Like a
owner
CEO
of
or whatever.
of a business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's mad at him for having money. Like Joe Biden
Yeah.
doesn't care about that. Joe Biden is famously happy that people are billionaires.
Yeah.
He's mad
Well,
that he's making his money making a product that makes young people happy, because that is intrinsically bad to Joe Biden.
Right. He doesn't want anybody who's younger than 68 to be happy.
Yeah, he just keeps seeing things in video games and he's like, "This is the worst thing since Nickelodeon."
Yeah, he doesn't want anything past like organ grinders or ice cream shops to be in business. He thinks kids should just be like buying a saltwater taffy and going to the fair or
He
something.
really does. It's like when he told, what was it? He was telling black families to turn on the television, and then he stopped himself and he says, the phonograph.
I love that moment so
phonograph?
much. He stopped himself. He almost said television, and he was like, "Excuse me, the phonograph. They're too poor and black to have a TV. I know that, but they probably have a record player." It's so insane.
Yeah, Joe Biden is a broken human being who is just melting in front of your eyes. It's hilarious, and he's not going to win Iowa. He's not going to win anything.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to die around his family, probably rich and stuff.
He'll be
but-
rich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any poll that tells you otherwise is literally just a poll where the questions were phrased based on name recognition. It's like when you see like a map of like where the most murders are committed in the United States, and then you overlay it with a population density map, and you're like, oh, I mean that explains it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of polls about recognizing Pete Buttigieg and his supporters wonder aloud, why do black people not like us? What is wrong with these baffling blacks?
What is happening with the blacks?
It's so bizarre. It's a whole article literally of just like they'll talk about his policies and like his support base a little bit, and then there will be a little like interjection by one of the people that they've decided to interview, like this gem where it says, I think it's partly because of the incident that happened in South Bend, said Sue Seidenfeld, a retired physician, et cetera, et cetera. She did not specify the incident. Like,
Yeah,
Oh,
it's like
you mean the incident where he like bulldozed 1,000 homes of poor people and like displaced like tons of black families?
no,
Yeah.
not that incident. The incident where a cop shot someone who was black, and
Oh.
then he
That incident.
yeah.
didn't take a side, or was like, "Well, I can't do anything. I have to be neutral."
Yeah,
Probably
well,
that incident.
Which
Maybe
one
that
of that
incident.
incident specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah, this article, the lead on this article is, to him, all lives matter, said an Iowa
Oh my
voter who
God.
likes butt judge.
Oh man.
That's so fucked up. There was another guy who was like, I gotta find this. It was a youth pastor. It gives me a little pause, said Justin Stoffa, a strong Buttigieg supporter who worked in youth ministry in Des Moines of Buttigieg's polling with black voters. But Stoffa said he didn't think candidates should target specific demographics. So I think these are just white people saying like, I don't know why Buttigieg isn't popular with black people, but I bet if he was, I wouldn't like him as much.
Wow, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
Are youth pastors allowed to be not pedophiles?
No, youth pastors are not allowed to do a lot of things, but they must be pedophiles. I believe that is in. It depends on if you're Methodist or Calvinist. The rules are a little different.
Oh,
but-
okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, if you either want to fuck children or beat them.
Yeah, that's right. No, yeah, that's right.
But yeah, this article is hilarious because it's just a bunch of absolutely clueless white people. I mean, it's really kind of long. And it's not really worth reading because it's basically just like a bunch of people completely not understanding how capitalism works, how racism works, how Butt Chug is a CIA agent, like literally just absolute baffling shit.
Yeah, it's very weird, and it's like in some ways some of them may be sad. I mean, you don't really find out much about the people they're interviewing, so it's like some of them probably are just like small business tyrants and you shouldn't feel any sympathy for them, but there's a lot where you can like hear the wheels turning as these people are like, well, I like Pete because he says good things and he says he supports good things, which I believe, but I also like being not racist, and I'm not racist, and Pete can't be racist, but black people don't like him, so why don't they like him? I don't know.
I think it's all said in this quip from that same Sue Seidenfeld from earlier, where she says she thinks Buttigieg was more empathetic to minorities than a lot of people, which means nothing. She says, I also think, for what it's worth, that it's a shame that people think that Iowa shouldn't be the first caucus in the nation, because after all, we were the first to go for Barack Obama. So like,
The fuck?
This lady's brain is just like, well, we led the country in electing a black guy. Why not lead the country in electing a gay guy? I must be the coolest person ever. Like, just for thinking of that.
I am so woke.
Listen, we had a black president and we liked him, so maybe actually we get this black stuff a little more than you think.
Other black Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's pretty insane. You should treat everyone as human beings and don't worry so much about their skin color. Although that plays a role. This is also Justin Staffa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I don't see race. Oh, but I mean, I know that race exists. I don't want to ignore, but I mean,
yeah.
They're just like, it's like their first day in like social justice class and they're just tripping over themselves to be right already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that answer rules because it's like you can literally hear them be like, "You shouldn't worry about it so much." I mean, obviously, you should worry about it some because of racism. I mean, I'm not saying that. It's like they're really like feeling uncomfortable even like broaching this subject.
A white person is interviewing a white supporter about black people, and they're like,
excuse me.
Well,
don't
listen, I just want to
me.
make sure I don't say anything racist here.
I'm talking to BuzzFeed. I don't want to wind up on the listicle of 10 biggest racists in Iowa.
Yeah.
Whoa. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just so weird because it's like, I guess I like that BuzzFeed is like, let's interview all of these white people about why their candidate is so racist. But at the same time, I wish that people just stopped caring about Buttigieg at this point.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
No, he's not gonna win. He has literally no chance. Like, I mean, I've always said, and I've said since we started this podcast, like, never believe polls. Mm-hmm. But like, there's a level at which there's no coming back. Like, he's not gonna like. He's not such a strong force that he's going to come back and win.
No, it's a totally outside
Iowa.
shot. It ain't going to fucking happen. I mean, he's propped up by a lot of corporate money and influence, but they're dragging this out because they can serve two purposes. One, to distract from Bernie Sanders, which is not working, thank goodness. And two, because they want to run him again, next fucking presidential election, and the one after that, and the one after that. That's why he's their secret weapon. They're like, we're gonna get this CIA stooge elected, like, by come hell or high water. Eventually.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that Buttigieg probably is down for that and like understands the sort of long game of like he's putting himself out there as like the new face of the Democratic Party that's like cool with summarily executing counterinsurgency in foreign countries and is like this sort of SJW face. Like, he is everything the Democrats will want in 8 years or
he's like
4
the
years,
prodigy. He's had such an intuitive understanding of the way that the current like DNC elites operate that I bet he's been running on the same plan since he was like 12 fucking years old. He's like, I'll run for president a couple times and fail, and then political conditions willing, I'll run twice, and then Chasten can run after I'm not president anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's all just sort of this political royalty game they're playing, and I'm hoping that I think everybody's hoping that just stops being allowed. At a certain point, the Democratic Party is just going to split and no one's allowed to be in it anymore.
Or you'll be a huge fucking nerd if you're in the Democratic Party. Everybody will make fun of them. They'll be like the Lib Dems essentially are in the UK right now.
Ooh,
like, it sucks that the Tories won, but it rules that the Lib Dems got completely rocked.
Or they'll just be the Whigs.
A party just like fading in popularity for 100 years.
Yeah, exactly. Just like, oh yeah, that party exists still. Okay,
okay,
interesting.
Go off, Whigs.
They got 2 senators.
Yeah, all right. I see you, Whigs.
With the way U.S. politics are, I feel like if the Democrats got small and insignificant enough, especially if it was because most people left them for a further left party, they would just opt to join the Republicans, and we would be right back to a 2-party system. But there would be actual confrontation between them instead of just like holding hands and pretending to bicker about issues that don't cost any money on the federal budget.
Right. I mean, we're gonna have a 2-party system until they change the voting system, and if there's anybody who's going to do that, it's going to be Bernie Sanders. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, that was something I mean, obviously the New York Times endorsement is stupid, but I thought it was interesting that they were like, well, we're going to endorse two candidates. One is the realist and one is the radical. Where it's like, even in their like...
radical.
Yeah, the quote unquote radical, 10 million air quotes. Marx is spinning in his grave.
Funny.
But like, they were kind of acknowledging, like, even from their ivory tower, like, they're just picking whoever they want. Like, nobody likes Amy Klobuchar, but they're still like, well, we're kind of realizing that the party is splitting into camps a little bit, and there's like a more left camp, and then there's like the older or centrist camp from the 90s, and it's like, it's interesting that even the New York Times can't like pretend that's not happening. Like,
They can't pretend
it's very
Amy
mainstream.
Klobuchar is a viable candidate. She's not even... she's behind Pete Buttigieg, who is already basically a joke candidate, who's just playing a long game at this point. Like, Klobuchar should have dropped out like 3 months ago.
She's like tied with Andrew Yang or something. I feel like she's behind Yang, honestly.
Oh my
and like
God.
they would never dream of endorsing
I think
Andrew
she is
Yang.
behind. Yeah, exactly.
She's just a fucking like nobody. Nobody gives a shit about her, but they're like, well, she's perfect
Yeah,
for
calling her a realist is like a realist for what?
Yeah,
She's
for-
running for president with less than 1% of like popular, like, fuck support, name recognition. Nobody knows who the fuck she is.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, people watch MSNBC and they're like, Amy Klobuchar? I heard about her 2 weeks ago. She does something in like Michigan or Maine or something. I think I'm supposed to like her. I don't know. Like, that's most of this country. Nobody, like, except for weirdos like us who were like following the primary news like it's
No,
a sport or something.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it keeps looking like they keep saying like it's going to come down to Bernie, Biden, and Warren. And like Biden just simply isn't going to fucking win. But I kind of love that they leave him in there because it striates the vote in 3 directions. And like I worry that if they had already like locked down on Warren as their candidate like a couple of debates ago, they might actually be able to push Bernie out. But this total like inability to actually make a decision and do something is going to be the thing that gives Bernie like a plurality of the primary and hopefully gets him the nomination.
Well, it's also like all of these absolutely terrible, like obvious tactics from the DCCC and the Democratic Party chiefs. You know, Hillary Clinton coming out today and giving an interview saying like Bernie sucks and no one likes him.
No one likes him.
This bitch who lost with a popular vote, like to Donald Trump, like saying, please do not vote for Bernie Sanders, only makes people want to vote for Bernie Sanders.
And
Yeah,
and
right.
also being asked like, well, would you support him and endorse him if he wins? And she's like, we're not there yet.
Of course
And it's
not,
like-
because she loves having Donald Trump be president. She loves it. She's in love with it because not just they're old friends. She lost an election to him, and then she wrote a book that sold 167,000 copies in the first week at $30 a copy. She made like $5 million in a week from losing an election, and she would be thrilled if she got the opportunity to repeat that and write a book about how Warren loses a fucking election, or how about Joe losing the election was like seeing Obama lose an election, or some insane fucking bullshit, so she can rake in another 5, 10, 15 million fucking dollars.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
the phrase is like America loves an underdog, and the Democratic Party has like created a fortune and a grift out of being the underdog by just fucking losing all of the fucking time.
Yeah,
and it's like
they're the face of capitalism that keeps telling you that like you can't quite have the commodities that are like promised to you, but we're going to get them to you. And then by failing on their promise over and over and over again, they generate this desire, this maddening addiction to the promise of something that you never get, that people become hooked on. And that's the only reason they even have a fucking base, is because people have like Stockholm syndrome, that one of these days they're finally going to feel fulfilled and represented in the political process by a bunch of fucking Hillary Clintons and Elizabeth Warrens and Bill Clintons and Joe Bidens for that matter. It's disgusting.
it's really dumb.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's also like Hillary gets to like live in a fantasy land where there's like still millions of liberals. Like, I bet somebody still operates that if Hillary won Twitter account, and they're like, imagine how good it would be. I mean, people like when fucking Trump murdered Soleimani, they were like, what if fucking Hillary was president? What then? Like, people constantly live in the fantasy land of like what would have happened if Hillary is president. And the honest answer is, if Hillary was president, she wouldn't be doing anything that different from Trump. She might not have as much open concentration camps at the borders, but she would be incredibly unpopular because half the Democratic Party doesn't like her. Nobody on the right would like her. She would be smeared constantly. She would be seen as like one of the worst presidents ever, probably.
Well, she would probably still have killed Soleimani. She just would have figured out a way to do it that had different, like, further backdoor geopolitical implications. You know, Trump is just dumb. Like, Hillary would have done it and been cold and calculating about it, and it wouldn't even have been a news item. And, like, who's to say which one is better or worse? They're both fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, whatever they put on the list of, like, well, this is the nuclear option of, you know, if you want to kill Soleimani, she might have been like, no, we should wait on that for a few months.
Yeah.
Because I'm reasonable. I'm a reasonable lady, and I know how to be a president, and we're not going to just go and murder someone without manufacturing consent for 6 months.
Yeah, she would have been a talented administrator about it. She would have been like, no, let's build a dossier on him for several months so that when they ask us why we did it, we can be like, well, we had all of this intelligence and everything indicated, instead of Trump, who's just like, you know what, fucking drone the guy. But at the end of the day, it's the same fucking move. It's just a little harder to see through with a fucking polished liberal up there.
Well, it's the problem is that people think politics is the tactics of doing the exact same thing with finesse.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
that's true.
People think politics is like, well, if you just run around and be mean, no one's going to like you. And it'll have different outcomes if you do the exact same thing, but really nice.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, mildly true. Like, Barack Obama drone bombing thousands of civilians, like, people do like him, and like he's able to like keep the center.
Well, he would give a sober press conference and be like, these people were killed, we did what we had to do, listen, you know, it's a tough world out there.
We tortured some people.
Yeah, and he could like
wasn't a good idea.
He could sell it in whatever like weird way he does.
What we're saying is that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama are lawful evil, and Donald Trump is just chaotic evil.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
because because those are just the same political moves, because that's not what politics is. You've got to do something completely materially different to have different politics.
Yeah, politics are in most part, they are substantive, right? They have content, and it's the content, it's the decisions and the actions that make up that content of politics that really is the body of politics, and not just like the way you smile and wave and like ride in a bulletproof limousine or like are escorted by Secret Service guards or whatever. Like, that's all just like fucking show. And that's one of the reasons I think having Bernie in office would be really good for this country, just on like a psychological level, is because he's such a no bullshit, like no nonsense kind of guy who literally doesn't give a shit about formality most of the time, that I think that would be really good for like our like working class like political minds across the country that are influenced by like TV and what the president says and how he's reported on and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think he hates it.
It's in earnest, and it would connect with a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree. Well, speaking of politics,
oh wow,
Puerto Rico has been going through a lot recently. I believe that was an earthquake there, and then there was so there's a CNN has an article was reporting this week that Puerto Rico emergency director fired after residents discover warehouse full of Hurricane Maria supplies.
My God.
Wanda Vasquez Garced fired the island's emergency manager hours after a warehouse filled with supplies was discovered. The emergency aid is believed to be from when Hurricane Maria hit the island 2 years ago. So why didn't she give the pallets?
Yeah, well, she said that, and this was already once she was this was when she was already coming under fire. She said anybody in the group who took supplies from the warehouse once it was discovered, because like once it was discovered, people flocked to it and started taking videos with their phones and stuff. She's like, you won't be prosecuted, all of that stuff. And I'm like, oh wow, you know, like, thank you so very fucking much. Meanwhile, she had to fire Carlos Acevedo, the guy who like was renting this for his like government body, I guess, the branch that he worked for. And then like that didn't pacify anybody, because they were like, this is like 800 pallets of fucking like water, bottled water that they said like was expired and should have been thrown away. And we need this right now. And so she fired 2 more department heads who were potentially involved in this. And now it looks like they want her to resign. So within 6 months of the Ricky Renuncia event where they got their old governor resigned, they are now looking to get the resignation of the next governor. And from the interviews that they're giving with people, it seems like Puerto Ricans are just fed the fuck up. They're like, let's throw them all out. Let's get rid of all of our crooked ass elected officials.
Hey, what if the people could run the government?
Yeah.
If there was no government.
Yeah, because I mean, like, at this point, Puerto Rico is kind of in a state where, like, they don't really rely on their administration to do a lot of things. Like, there is still aid being handed out, and there are departments running, like, as they should on paper. But a lot of Puerto Rico has to, like, be self-sufficient and engage in mutual aid right now to keep a lot of different, like, communities getting reliable food, reliable water, because they've had, like, natural disaster after natural disaster in the last, like, 3 years. So it's one of those situations where, in a lot of ways, they already have the prefigurative politics to be like, you know what, we don't need bourgeois politicians at all. Like, whether we want to handle it in a non-hierarchical way or form a vanguard party or whatever, like, we don't need the United States being here. But that's the problem.
Yeah, they definitely don't.
The Puerto Rican government is, you know, they're a territory of the United States. So it's all backed by the federal government of the U.S. and the U.S. military. They're a protectorate and everything. So it's like, if they try and have a revolution, that's a revolution in the United States. And that goes, you know, one of 2 ways. It's either brutally repressed or the rest of the country joins along. Fingers crossed.
So just real quick, why were they keeping the water? Do we know that?
Nobody has gotten a straightforward answer from the people who seem to be in charge of it. I watched like a 13-minute interview with I think he's like the head of one of the emergency branches of the armed services that was sent there to take over in the wake of this like scandal. And he said that there was like 2 different facilities, a 42,000 square foot one and a slightly smaller one, were being rented by this one government agency from another government agency for almost like $1 million in total between the 2, which is way overpriced, way inflated, and that they were full of like emergency supplies that clearly were not expired. It was mostly bottled water, and that's all that anybody seems to know. Nobody knows what the ulterior motive behind this was. Everybody's trying to blame it on like administrative error, but they're all trying to keep their jobs. So, you know,
well, of course, yeah. But we're the administrators.
Yeah, right.
We just made an error. I don't listen. Someone who wasn't me. I did everything fine, but everyone around me, they made a lot of errors. Let's just say.
Yeah, and it's so funny because this like what's her name, Wanda Vasquez, the governor, is just firing people fucking left and right. She's like, maybe it was this guy's fault. Is that enough for you? No, you're still angry?
You happy
Maybe
horde?
It was these 2 people's fault. Will you stop demonstrating now? No? Okay, who do I have to fire?
Let's just fire everyone.
Yeah. How about you quit and you take everybody with you and you let the people who are demonstrating form a government? I think that would be the right way to go.
Yeah. Maybe someone was trying to hoard the supplies and like sell them or something.
It was
or
probably
like,
selling them at inflated costs. That's
my
often
guess.
the case. Is like when there's a black market, especially in an area where like supplies are scarce for something. It's often the government selling to the black market directly, and I expect that that's probably what was happening in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Like anywhere where there's like a ton of bureaucracy or like red tape involved in like people getting what they need, it's like anyone who's in the bureaucracy is just gonna like take a little skim for themselves.
Of course,
take a little off the top. Yeah, I mean, like stuff like this, it just makes you like I'm not even sure where the like water came from, if it was like bought by the government or like donated or whatever, but like
Donald Trump gave it to him.
Oh yeah, he tossed water bottles and paper towels.
Our big web boy.
It just makes you realize like how futile anything like charity or things like that are in the face of like obstinate governments, because it's like, assuming this stuff was like water, like it's totally possible that people in the US like donated to some kind of fundraiser to send bottled water to Puerto Rico, but then it's like, if there's a government there that doesn't care about its people, it can just hoard the supplies, and that can be true anywhere for any number of things. So it's like, you really need a direct pipeline, a connection between the people and the system of government for them to actually distribute supplies to themselves where they're needed.
Yeah,
Right,
there has to be
exactly.
like direct communication and like an absence of corporate lobbying and essentially bottom up like accountability, right? Like where you're not accountable to the person who works above you, they're accountable to you, and you're accountable to the people that you represent, all the way down until like you have the people who aren't in positions of power in like the state government, but their position of power is that they're collectively your boss. That's, you know, and there's the potential for that to happen in Puerto Rico if there's not massive U.S. federal intervention, which I expect that there will be. And I'm surprised that I'm not seeing more of it already. Although, like, who knows? I wouldn't be surprised if all of this extra water was like sent down from Trump personally with a note like, "Here, this one's for you, Acevedo. Hoard this and make a
Yeah.
fortune on the black market." But you did
Totally.
good. Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't put that past anybody.
That is how Trump does crimes, just like leaving obvious evidence all over the place where he's like, we're doing a crime. Like, wasn't there like some email like from Donald Trump Jr. where it was like almost as dumb as like crimes? Like, I'd love to do some crimes. Let's do it. I think it was about the Hillary Clinton emails where he's like, if this is what you say it is, I'm very interested. Let's meet and talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't remember that specifically, but it sounds exactly like them. It seems like we're so desensitized to event after event where people in this administration and people who are responsible to this administration are just like openly lying when there's like evidence that everybody has that's flying right in the face of what they're saying. And they're like, you know what? Nope, my position overrides that. And I don't want to be one of those liberals who's like, oh, we live in a post-truth era where feelings are more important. Like, shut up. It's always been that way. There's always been this level of theater. But like, it is really bad now. This is a crisis point. This is capitalism in crisis. This is the heightened contradiction. And there's a couple ways out. I know which ones I'm okay with, you know?
Oh yeah. I know which ones I like.
Yeah.
Speaking of knowing who you like, two articles this week came out that I wanted to mention at the very least. One is from NBC and the other one is from the New York Times. Both of them have basically the same premise, but the NBC one is called "Trump's MAGA supporters and Twitter Bernie bros have this ugly tactic in common." Bernie Twitter operates under the self-righteous guise of being the true progressives of the internet, but their harassing tactics are anything but progressive.
Oh my God.
So this one is
Harassment. It's not harassment to like be right and tell you that you're wrong. Like if you're like, I think that 2 + 2 is 1,000, and I'm like, I don't think that's true, buddy. We can look it up, and you just be like, that's harassment.
posting snake emojis, harassment.
Oh man, now that I see these articles, for reasons I don't know, I guess I have followers that are masochists. I saw a tweet from the Horse Whisperer, probably
Oh,
the
no.
biggest freaking loser on Twitter. And he was basically saying the same thing. He was like, there's a reason that I call out Bernie, and it's because of boating. Boat in all capitals.
Boating?
Yeah, he's saying that women often get boated, which is Bernie's online something. I forget what.
Is the Horse
insane and
Whisperer
stupid.
45 years old? Wearing
He's
I think
probably
so.
60
Sneakers?
years
'Cause,
old.
like,
Yeah.
He was
Oh
like
my
doxxed
God.
at some point. People saw pictures of him. He's like a middle-aged dude who's worked as in like PR for the oil industry. Like he's a fucking monster, and it seems like he just does PR for these people for free.
That's wild.
Maybe
I
he
mean,
gets
this
paid.
article is,
Yeah.
is just as wild anyway. Like it's so fucking weird. They tried to say that Bernie bros are running around saying not supporting Bernie is anti-Semitic, which I have never heard in my life. They're
Yeah,
repeating
no one's ever said that.
They're repeating the often told lie, and here it's stated as people of color and women who dare to disagree with Sanders' political assertions have often borne the brunt of this abuse. That's not fucking true. People of color and women are two groups with whom Bernie polls better than the other fucking Democratic candidates. Are you telling me his own base is harassing itself?
Ugh. This is like Hillary was talking about this too. She was like, his online Bernie bros, they're harassing everyone, especially the women candidates. It's like they just state this as fact that like everyone who likes Bernie is a frat bro who DMs people rape
Right.
threats or something.
I find this line of thinking very offensive in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's incredibly racist and misogynist to be like, only these people are men.
Yeah,
Like
completely. Yeah.
only
Oh,
people who can who would act this way are men.
By the way, the boat is Bernie's online abuse team. It's
Oh
the
my
very
God.
cool phrase that the horse whisperer made up. Yeah, I mean, now that I think about it, I think MSNBC did like put a horse whisperer tweet up on like the board to discuss at some point. So like maybe they fucking read his tweet and were like, oh, we should write an article about this. Who even knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because in this article he like links to this supposed saying you don't like Bernie's anti-Semitism, and he links to that tweet. But the tweet is that author writing a different article in USA Today that says Kurt peddling anti-Semitism as ageism while simultaneously serving his corporate masters. Blue check bingo winner. And I haven't read this article, but this guy isn't saying that not supporting him is being anti-Semitic. It's whatever is in this article is anti-Semitic,
Yeah.
which I have.
Which it may be. Who knows?
I would be
Yeah.
shocked if it wasn't.
Also, that tweet has 28 likes. Like, how fucking deep do they have to dig? Like, that's your big thing is one guy. He probably has 500 followers.
Yeah, Bernie
got
Bros are
one
fucking
retweet.
posters. We're out here getting like 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 likes on a tweet. You got to dig for something with 27 fucking likes on it? That's pathetic.
Yeah.
I shit tweets that have 27 likes on them, and I only have 2,000 followers.
Yeah, honestly, like at that point, you can basically just make it up because Twitter has hundreds of millions of people on it. You can find someone saying anything. You can make a fake Twitter account saying anything and then just be
Right.
like, everyone's saying this.
Yeah, I mean,
that's true.
always these sort of articles are always or just this complaint, right? This complaint that like Bernie Sanders supporters were mean to me, and it's like, what happened?
Yeah, what
Well,
Bernie
in my
Bro harassed
fifis.
you? Dr. Cornell West? Nina Turner? Eric Andre? Like, who harassed you? Tell me.
Yeah.
Name names. Like,
And then it's like when they do, it's always like, this person just showed you a graph.
Yeah.
Like this person literally just barely said anything, just said, no, it isn't. And then posted a graph and they're like, that's harassment.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it isn't.
yeah, Danny DeVito flipped me off in traffic. When will Bernie Bros stop sinking to new lows?
Brianna Joy Gray hit me with her car when I was riding my bike.
Yeah. And then it's like starting this argument is so stupid. Like it's so tactically dumb because they should just, if they don't want to play this game, they should just act like perfect little angels and not attack anybody.
Yeah.
But they can't do that because they are, so it's total projection because Bernie Sanders is famously slanted and like attacked in the media.
Yeah.
Like, what do you, you're just pointing the finger back at yourself. You look like an idiot. No
Yeah.
one believes it.
This is the journalism equivalent of starting all of your like dishonest phrases with "I just think it's funny how Bernie
Yeah.
Bros keep attacking women and people of color," and it's like, could you substantiate that? And they're like, "No, I just think it's funny. I think it's kind of a funny thing."
Yeah, I think I'm not mad. I'm actually laughing.
Yeah, it's just weird. It's just immature that they want to act like that when they could, be above it all. Like me.
So that one's basically like just saying like even John Legend has been bullied.
Rich people should be bullied. Like, fucking cry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also funny because he's not really. It links to that tweet where he says he's endorsing Warren, and then he says some of you Bernie supporters do quite the disservice to your candidate, who seems to be a great human being. I'll try not to drive people away with your nastiness. And then people are just like saying like linking a Bernie bro was rude to me online. I don't know where these people thought that no one was mad about anything. Like, like, are you saying like when Bill Clinton was running and when George Bush was running, like no one was being mean to each other? Like, I don't know. Did it really change this much?
They probably were much more so. It was just that it was in this like stratified area where it's like a Bill Clinton surrogate and a George Bush surrogate could like argue on CNN. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or they could like make snipes at each other in their newspaper columns or whatever. But like the proles weren't allowed in. You know,
Yeah.
it was like their own world in Washington and like in the media. And it's like now that we can get involved and like we can just yell at one of these, media figures. Now they're like, it's too mean. Don't be mean to people about it.
Right. And speaking about media columns, David Brooks in the New York Times wrote an opinion called "The Bernie Sanders Fallacy," and it starts. The lead is "No, Virginia, there is no class war."
What?
What? What the fuck?
This is a golden age for theism. This is the belief that there is some malevolent elite they out there, and they are destroying life for the rest of us. Yes, that's you, David Brooks. Thank you.
Yep.
There is Donald Trump's culture war, theism. The coastal cultural elites, blah, blah, blah. And then there's Bernie Sanders' class war, theism. The billionaires have rigged the economy to benefit themselves and impoverish everyone else. Each of these stories takes a genuine tension in society and blows it up into an all-explaining cartoon in which one part of America is trying to destroy the other part.
No, here's how it works, David Brooks. Okay, sit down because this might rock your fucking world. There is actually a reason that there's tension in the world, and it's called the class struggle, okay? The bourgeois are winning it right now, but the proletarians are going to win it eventually. And Bernie Sanders has a modest recognition of that, and that's why you're fucking scared of him. And this is essentially the equivalent of being like, oh, Donald Trump saying that, like, coastal elites are like more dangerous than rural Americans is the same as identifying class consciousness is the same as being a huge racist or an anti-Semite. It's all just theism. You're just pinning it on some other. There can't possibly actually be another, that is ruining the world, like a people with a bunch of power or a bunch of money or something.
No. He writes, as Michael Strain of the American Enterprise Institute puts it, capitalism is doing what it's supposed to do. What do you think the American Enterprise Institute is, John? It's a right-wing think tank. Of course it is. It's
I wanted
rewarding.
to say cult. I just was holding back the word cult.
It's same
It's a
thing.
Star Trek fan club. They want an American Starship Enterprise.
This is the same think tank that had a controversy with the Barry Goldwater campaign.
My God, their racism runs deep.
Yes.
Jesus Christ.
They are funded by the Koch brothers, obviously. They are one of the main sources of people who take millions of dollars from ExxonMobil for anti-climate change propaganda, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So the capitalism is doing what it's supposed to do, according to them, and David Brooks believes it.
Yeah. I mean, I also love, like, earlier when he was like, there's no simple answer of what they are doing. It's like he confuses the fact that he's never read a book about leftist politics or about the economy or anything. He confuses that fact with, like, oh, it must be really simple. And it's like, no, if you actually, like, read a blog even, or like watch some YouTube videos or read some Marx, you'd be like, oh, I see. It's very, very complicated. There's a lot of ins and outs and what have yous that explain the incredibly complicated way that the rich run the world, but they still run the world.
Yeah, well, and there's this paragraph in this that's particularly enlightening where he says, class war progressivism always loses to culture war conservatism because swing voters in the Midwest care more about their values, guns, patriotism, ending abortion, masculinity, whatever, than they do about proletarian class consciousness. Dude, you literally just said that your, like, cosmic brain take on this was an answer to theism, and then you're just like, well, people in the Midwest are just country bumpkins who hate gay people and love a gravy on some fries.
Yeah, I totally don't believe that. I tweeted last night that I think that leftists maybe should run as Republicans in some areas.
Yeah.
And I haven't really thought this completely through, so don't take this completely seriously. I'm joking, not really, but I might be wrong
here
about this. I'm spitballing it, but I do think that Republicans, there is a constituency, right, that voted for Trump that is now voting for Bernie.
And voted for Obama before that.
I think a lot of people just vote red because, as far as they've known throughout their life, the Republicans have protected their jobs. At least that's how they in those areas, and that might be true. And for the same reason that, like, lots of dumbasses vote blue no matter who, and lots of dumbasses vote red no matter who too. And so I think if someone is out there being like, Mitch McConnell has fucked you, that's something that those people in those areas know for a fact. And if a primary person was like, hey, my whole thing is I'm not Mitch McConnell and I think the workers need more rights, and like I think, and they ran on the Republican ticket, I think that they could win. So I don't believe that that all of these country bumpkins are like, this is just like saying like all Democrats want is gay marriage, abortions all the time, and I don't know, what is another Democratic sort of dog whistle?
Trans woman president.
Yeah. Liberal id poll.
Yeah.
And it's like that's not true either. And if you are a leftist and you know that's not true, but you think that all Republicans will only vote for, you know, guns, homophobia, and misogyny, anti-abortion shit, then you're being tricked by the party just as much.
Yeah, you're just wrong. It's like, you know, the Midwest has had the internet for like 20 years now, even the most remote parts. Like the middle of South Dakota has had broadband internet for like over a decade. So it's not all just as cut and dry as it was before. And they're like college towns in the mid, like the Midwest is not homogenous, just like any part of the country is not fucking homogenous. Like there are still people in cornfields who are like, I just want whoever hates gay people and will give me my guns back. Like those voters exist, but they're a dying breed, you know? They're a smaller and smaller part of the voting block every election.
Yeah, because those people are becoming like either old and dead or incredibly radicalized young people.
Yeah.
Like, you know, most people aren't fascists. Like I don't believe that. Like I think most people, the only reason they like Trump is because he was the only person who was at least faking it and saying like, these are the problems that you're facing, and I agree, that's bullshit, we should not take that. And
well, that's how fascism gains power, right? Is it like notices that there's a crisis and then it offers a bullshit solution for it, and then it never delivers on it, and it just like keeps reaping the benefits for itself, for the already fucking oligarchical ruling class. And it's easy to get duped by that if you don't have a proper fucking political education. So maybe instead of looking down on fucking Midwesterners, you should go to some podunk town in the Midwest and talk to Jim Bob about how like Bernie Sanders is going to give him health care so he has money to get his truck fixed, or whatever the fuck cartoon character you want to pretend you go out and talk to. David Brooks.
And honestly, like fascism is a way better explanation than this bullshit, than this fucking like, well, the Brookings Institute told me that there's a productivity gap between companies and workers, and so it's not that fucking capitalism is failing, it's not that capitalists are exploiting their workers, it's productivity inequality.
Yeah, people don't give a shit about that. And that's why Bernie Sanders can win the fucking votes. They're like from people who would otherwise vote for Trump. Plenty of people, if they see a Warren Trump ticket in the United States, are just going to pick Trump instinctively. They're going to be like, oh, I don't know about that milquetoast Democrat, you know, I don't know about Elizabeth Warren. But if they see Bernie Sanders' name there, they're going to remember an angry old man who got on TV and was like, there's problems in the United States and I'm here to fix them. I have solutions for them. They'll fucking vote for that because it does get people riled up, and it helps, you know, that when you put his, you know, solutions under a microscope, they also make sense. That's the unity of like actually having a plan and
they're not
being
evil
able to speak to a wide base. That's like called electability, I think.
Yeah, and it's why it's so brain dead when there's like insular like Democratic Party people or media people or whatever who are like, well, Bernie hasn't really been a Democrat for his whole life and he's independent and people don't like that. It's like, you know, the only 30 people who care about that. Like there's 2,000 people where it's like, well, I only want a real true blue Democrat. The rest of the country is like, you guys are fucking moron freaks who talk about bullshit like the Brookings Institute all the time, haven't offered me anything that I would need in my life in 30 years, and now there's this like weird angry guy who's wearing a rumpled suit, and you say he's not a Democrat. Sounds good. I'll vote for him.
Sure, great, whatever. Yeah, this article is so fucking batshit stupid and like just mask off defense capitalism, being like, no, everything is fine actually. That even Nate Silver on Twitter like roasted this article, being like, he screenshotted a part where he says these Democrats are doing this even though it's political suicide. Class war progressivism always loses to culture war conservatism, which is the one you said, John, because swing voters in Midwest care about the guns patriotism than they do about proletarian class consciousness. And Nate Silver said, this is a rather strange claim from Brooks, not least because Obama, and for that matter, even Kerry and Gore all did fairly well in the Midwest, running against the sort of culture war conservatism that he describes. And it's like, even Nate Silver, a notoriously right-wing wonk.
Yeah, he's like a libertarian, I think.
Yeah, who he's just like by the numbers. He just can't help but actually be like, actually, that's not even kind of true.
It's not even approaching true if you check these stats over here.
It's really bird-brained and stupid. And I honestly, cool.
Yeah.
Like I'm happy that the Democratic Party and the levers of institution that these people hold are just like covered in chicken grease, and they do not know how to hold on to them when anyone tries to rattle it away from them. Like the people of America are like, hey, how about we hold this? And they're like, blah, oh, I don't know. What do you mean? It's
Stop
fine,
attacking
actually.
me.
There's not even a problem. What are you talking about?
Speaking of the ruling class shitting themselves, we have an article in the San Francisco Chronicle, I think it's called. And it is about their new DA that they recently elected in San Francisco. And this article
guy,
melted my brain. This dude
absolute
seems like such
boy.
a fucking badass. What absolute unit. Yeah. So who wants to read this? Because we want to do this as a reading series.
Yeah, we could do
It's
reading
really
series.
short. We can read it all.
Yeah, let's read it. So the article begins, in terms of major policy shifts, the city of San Francisco has served as a political torchbearer of sorts for California, and at times, the nation. Little full of yourselves right off the bat. Now, with the city's new Bernie Sanders-endorsed district attorney, Americans across the nation should be concerned about how a radical shift in prosecuting for the Golden City could have immediate national implications.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, he must be some bad guy, right? He must
Yeah.
be hate brown people or something.
I mean, when I started reading this, not knowing why you guys had posted it in the thread, I didn't know if I was supposed to be taking it seriously or not, and I was basically shitting myself after that. I was like, oh no, what is this, like a former cop who's been on record saying he hates black people or something?
Yeah.
We'll continue. We'll let you find out for yourself, dear listener. Within 48 hours of being sworn in on January 8th, San Francisco District Attorney Chesa Boudin fired, I hope I'm saying it right, fired 7 veteran attorneys, including several who were responsible for managing critical criminal units such as homicide, gang, and general felony.
Huh, interesting.
Not gang.
Yeah, not gang crime. How could you possibly go easier on the gangs? Anyway, as a former San Francisco assistant district attorney, I know this isn't just a typical case of administrative shakeup. Rather, it is a dangerous and disruptive move that does a grave disservice to victims and the community.
Okay, just to be clear, this article is being written by a former DA.
Yeah,
named
well, somebody
Kimberly.
who worked in the DA's office.
Oh, okay.
Assistant DA. And also is like the current head of the like Trump re-election financing committee.
Yes.
And is an advisor to Trump.
She
Really?
She
Yeah.
is she was the co-host on The Five on Fox News. So she just
my
left
God.
Fox News. She is a Republican. She is running a pro-Trump super PAC called America First.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that sucks so bad.
Yeah.
All right, well, she continues. The institutional knowledge possessed by someone like Ana Gonzalez, who headed the city's gang unit, is irreplaceable. Criminal organizations and their operations are often very complex, especially in a metropolitan area such as San Francisco. Without prosecutors who have a deep understanding of the various syndicates and the players within them, lawful prosecution of crimes becomes tremendously more difficult, allowing real criminals to walk free.
Hell yes.
no.
My face as John reads this is just the progressive clips from that Vince McMahon gif. He's like looking around in joy, like, what? Criminals walk free?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm more and more into it. She says
Yeah.
Assistant District Attorney Mike Swart, who was also among those fired, was recently honored by the Commission on the Status of Women of the City. Wait, hold on.
What?
Was recently honored by the Commission on the Status of Women of the City and County of San Francisco for successfully bringing to justice the killer of Perla Ann Lewis, who was violently murdered and stuffed into a suitcase, which is obviously bad, but of course you take this one like really egregious case of murder and you're like, this is why we have police. This is why we have overpaid gang and homicide prosecutors who definitely
Yeah.
don't racially profile or do other shady shit.
Well, it's also one of those things where it's like, oh, a poor white woman got murdered, and they definitely did a bunch of real police work and found the right person who actually killed them and didn't just walk up to a black guy they had beef with and said, you killed him.
Yeah, right.
You know,
I mean,
like we
that's
don't know
basically what it is.
I mean, like if anybody has listened to literally any reporting on police, like, you know, that happens constantly.
Yeah.
They just like, they're like, oh, we have a guy who we think did it because we think so, and his fingerprints match because we decided they do.
Yeah, let's just say his skin color matches the crime, if you know what I'm saying.
I mean, it's true. Anyway, some have pointed to Boudin's lack of experience as an excuse for his reckless actions. He has never actually prosecuted a case. I like him more and more with every sentence. He's never put anybody in jail. Hell yeah. The truth, though, is far more sinister. On top of quickly dismantling the violent crime division of his office, Boudin seeks to end the prosecution of what he deems quality of life crimes. Now, remember, this is the truth that is far more sinister than getting rid of the violent crime division. This is the real priority. Boudin seeks to end the prosecution of public camping, offering or soliciting sex, public urination, and blocking a sidewalk.
How dare they? They're not going to arrest people for those things?
It's not illegal to be homeless anymore. We're not going to prosecute sex workers anymore. Oh no, how will we ever solve murders? So fucked up. It says instead of handcuffing criminals, Boudin is handcuffing the prosecutorial process and Lady Justice herself.
Yes, ma'am.
I fucking love that part. I lost it when I saw this article and got to that part. It's like this person just sobbing, like watching a guy block the sidewalk, and it's like, you might as well just be handcuffing Lady Justice.
Yeah, this is literally
it's like a Ben Garrison cartoon.
This is literally Kelly from The Onion.
Yeah, it is.
Just like the actual Statue of Liberty outside the window crying.
Yeah, crying and being handcuffed while like a vagrant pisses on the sidewalk with an evil grin on his face. It's amazing.
All right, well, it continues. These firings weren't based on any incompetency within the department. They were just a transparent effort to cripple the department's prosecutorial ability. Boudin is advancing a radical ideology that's focused on completely redesigning the city's and the nation's criminal justice system.
Yes,
and this
ma'am.
is where the article gets so good because they drop a few bombshells here. It says, this dangerous reality is also being peddled by a new brand of Bernie Sanders-endorsed Democrats across the country. And worse yet, the ideology is seemingly inspired by American communist revolutionaries who gained notoriety during the late 1960s and early 1970s.
Hell yes.
Yeah, I'm like, keep going.
Let's hear about it. You think at this point in the article that she's going to be like, I don't know, Jimmy Carter.
No, yeah, totally.
Noam Chomsky.
John Kerry.
But
or
no,
something.
actually, go on.
Yeah, for Boudin, the ties that bind him to the violent leftist movement of the last century couldn't be closer. His adoptive parents are none other than Bill Ayers and Bernard Dorn, the notorious leaders of the communist-driven domestic terrorist group Weather Underground.
Hell yeah.
That rules so fucking much. And like, Chris, you told me
Incredible.
you were looking at his Wikipedia page and his original parents were like other people from the Weather Underground too?
Yeah, so his like biological mom and dad, when he was 14 months old, were arrested for like robbing a bank, and I think they like shot a cop and a security guard on the way out or something. So I think his dad got like 70 to life and his mom got 20 to life or something. Like she got out of jail in 2003. So his adoptive parents were just other friends they had from the Weather Underground movement, basically.
Not
Sick.
just other friends, Bill Ayers. Like,
Yeah,
one of the
fucking Bill
most
Ayers.
notorious and legendary like Weather Underground people.
Incredible.
Yeah. So it says like Ayers was involved in the bombings of a New York police station, the U.S. Capitol, and the Pentagon in the early 70s. Fuck yeah, way to go, Bill Ayers.
Good
As
job.
a young adult pursuing a career in law, Boudin didn't abandon the radical ideology of his upbringing. He embraced it by moving to Venezuela. Boudin served as a translator for Hugo Chavez, the communist dictator who dismantled the nation's democracy and set the country on the path to its current state of socialism-induced economic collapse. I can't can't stop laughing at this.
I know.
This guy
'Cause they-
rules so much.
Yes,
they can't tell him
ma'am.
like, why don't you go to Venezuela? Because he's already gone to Venezuela and lived there.
He literally was the translator for fucking Hugo Chavez.
Incredible.
So fucking awesome.
The
This is just
absolute
big dick energy
lad.
all the way down. This is the worst hit piece of all time because like I want to get a shirt with this guy's face on it now.
Yeah, this man is mounted. Incredible.
All right, so
he also his
it-
uncle. Weren't you saying his uncle
I think it's
was
his grandfather or something was like also a lawyer. What was a lawyer who served like Castro and Paul Robeson.
Yeah.
Like he basically comes from like a long line of dedicated hardline
big
communists.
time tankies?
Like
the real kind.
real deal commies. Yeah, it's
Real
insane.
deal commies. Well, I'm going to skip a bunch of this article because it gets
Okay.
into like some incredibly stupid conservative wonk shit. But the closing paragraphs go, as President Reagan famously said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. He was right because the road to communism is paved by the apathy of free people. Okay.
No.
Remember,
What?
this is an article literally saying we're not going to put as many people in jail and that's a bad thing. Now,
Right.
here's a quote about freedom from Ronald Reagan. And then it closes, for criminals, actions should have consequences. That will also be true in 2020 at the ballot box when voters are provided a choice between protecting law and order or protecting people who jaywalk. Oh no, it says criminals. But what they really mean is sex workers and vulnerable people and homeless people and people whose everyday lives and means of subsistence are routinely criminalized and routinely harassed by police, especially if they're not white, especially if they're not men, especially
Yes.
if they're not cis, not straight, whatever. So, like,
Go
this
off.
is literally just an appeal to protect the fucking status quo. It's one of the most disgusting things I've ever read in my life, but I didn't know about this absolute badass new DA in San Francisco. So for that, author of this article, I thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kimberly Guilfoyle or whatever the fuck
Yeah.
your name is.
Fuck you. But also, this article rules.
Yeah. Go
you
to
didn't
hell,
intend it to,
Kimberly.
but it does rule.
Yeah.
Honestly, it also rules that Bernie endorsed this guy. It's like he is not afraid of endorsing someone who is like comes from a line of like communists. You know, he's
because
not.
so does Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, totally. But it's like in his more recent career, it's like he definitely in the past has been like Soviet Union's good, Cuba is good, Venezuela is good. You know,
Yeah.
like more recently he has like been like, well, Scandinavia and Canada are good. So it's awesome that like even though he kind of like toes the line a little bit in like the debates and stuff, it's like he's like, well, I'll endorse someone who's a communist. I don't care.
Now, here's the thing: we don't know. We generally don't actually know that this guy is as far left as his awesome relatives.
Sure, that's true.
However, he does seem to be doing stuff that is making Republicans and right wingers very, very mad.
Mm-hmm.
And I was scrolling through his Twitter, and he seems to be very, on the left as far as you can be and still be a politician.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I mean, he like
that's
went
good.
to Yale, so it's like whatever that does to your brain, who knows?
Yeah, maybe
that's-
that
it's
was
definitely
balanced.
true.
The real centrism is going to Yale and also being Hugo Chavez's translator. That's
Yeah.
the real centrism.
It is really hard to imagine that he wasn't hanging out with Hugo Chavez for years and being like not influenced at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's see what he does. Let's keep an eye on him. Chesa Boudin, please come on the show.
Oh, yeah.
We would love to talk to you and tell us what your plans are for San Francisco.
And before we close out the episode, I just want to tentatively award Boudin Praxis of the Week. I think you earned it, bud. You
Yeah,
enjoy that.
good job
It's good
by-
for a free medium fry at McDonald's with purchase of a burger.
Anyone
Yeah.
firing cops simply for doing cop shit, good job.
pretty
Practice
cool.
of the week.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much for listening to Beep Beep Lettuce. This has been the episode for this week.
Boom.
I'm going to apologize again for two things. No sound effects.
We're very sorry.
Sorry for that. We forgot to take the cool new mixer we got from Todd's studio, and he's not back yet. So soon they'll be back. Don't yell at us. Other thing is being suspended on Twitter and asking you to please, please, please follow at Beep Beep Leaf with 2 E's again.
We're begging you.
because we used to have thousands of followers, and now we don't even have 1,000.
Just a K.
And it makes me want to cry.
Just a little K. That's all we're asking. Maybe a couple Ks.
just a little follow for the poor. Okay. Thanks so much for listening to BP Lettuce. It really means a lot that you listen to this. If you want to hear more of us talk about all kinds of fun shit, go to our Patreon at patreon.com/BP Lettuce. Please follow us individually. Kinematography. Go to Pinion Hever with no E. Facebook Villain. Check out my new show, Generation Loss. Please check out John's stream. He's been streaming a lot of Mario Maker shit on Twitch at twitch.tv/BBPlettuce, right?
Mm-hmm.
BP Lettuce Pod. And I've also been uploading the stream highlights to the BP Lettuce YouTube channel, which also has full episodes being uploaded to it now, as well as bonus previews. So check that out. It's called BP Lettuce the Podcast on YouTube.
Dude, we're making moves out here. Actually, we just got a new T-shirt design made by Rory Blank. Which, if you are a beaster, I have not forgotten about you. You are going to get that shirt. Also, DM me if you want that Soleimani shirt that may or may not have caused a lot of ruckus online. DM me and I'll try and get you one of those if you want it. I'm not going to send that to you because it's a little. I understand it might not be for everybody. But the new one is cute and is you'll get it for free. Please don't buy it. But also, check out our shit on Threadless if you aren't a beaster. Yeah, okay, and then hang out with us in Mids Posting, and we will see you in the Discord.
Stay beeping, people.